Sometimes, getting fired is the best thing that can happen to you. Welcome to Story Studio 91. Today, we bring you a story about a man who was fired from a coffee company, then came back and turned it into a global empire. His name is Howard Schultz, and his journey proves that rejection is not the end. It is redirection. Howard grew up in the projects of Brooklyn, New York. His family was poor, very poor. His father worked manual labor jobs. They lived in a tiny apartment where you could hear everything through the walls. When Howard was 7 years old, his father fell on ice while working. He broke his ankle and his hip. He couldn't work, and because he was a low-wage worker, he had no health insurance, no income. Nothing. Howard watched his mother cry. He watched his father stare at the wall in shame. He watched his family fall apart because one accident destroyed everything they had. That moment changed Howard forever. He promised himself that one day he would build a company that treated workers with dignity, a company that gave people health insurance even if they were not executives. Howard worked hard in school. He got a football scholarship to college. He was the first person in his family to go. After graduation, he worked in sales. He was good at it, but he was searching for something more meaningful. In 1982, Howard walked into a small coffee shop in Seattle called Starbucks. It only had for stores. They roasted coffee beans, nothing else. But Howard felt something magical there. The smell, the warmth, the community. He asked for a job. The owners didn't want to hire him, but Howard was persistent. He convinced them to give him a chance. Howard became the marketing director. He loved the job. He loved coffee. He loved the company. Then, Howard traveled to Italy. He saw something that changed his life: Italian coffee bars. They weren't just places to buy coffee. They were gathering places. People sat together. They talked. They connected. Howard had a vision. What if Starbucks could be like that in America? What if it could be a third place, not home, not work, but a place where people belonged? He went back to Seattle excited. He told the owners his idea. They said no. They didn't want to change. They wanted to just sell beans. Howard kept pushing. He showed them plans. He begged them to try. They said no again and again and again. Finally, they got tired of Howard's pushing. In 1985, they told him to leave. Howard was fired from the company he loved. He was devastated. He felt like a failure. He had a vision nobody wanted. But Howard did not give up. If Starbucks wouldn't let him build his dream, he would build it himself. He started his own coffee company called Il Giornale. He opened a few stores with coffee bars where people could sit and drink espresso. It was hard, very hard. Howard had to raise money. Investors kept saying no. They said Americans don't drink espresso. They said his idea would never work. Howard knocked on 242 doors asking for investment. 242. Almost everyone said no. But Howard kept going. He finally raised enough money to open his stores. They started to work. People loved them. Then in 1987, something unexpected happened. The original Starbucks owners decided to sell the company. Howard saw his chance. He borrowed money. He convinced investors. He bought Starbucks. The company that fired him was now his. But Howard didn't buy it for revenge. He bought it because he still believed in the vision. He merged his coffee bars with Starbucks. He kept the name because it was special. Then Howard did something radical. He gave health insurance to all employees, even part-time workers who worked just 20 hours a week. His investors told him he was crazy. They said, "You can't afford this. It will bankrupt the company." Howard said, "I don't care. I remember my father. I will not let that happen to my employees." This decision changed everything. Starbucks workers felt valued. They cared about the company because the company cared about them. They gave better service. Customers felt the difference. Starbucks began to grow. One new store, then 10, then 100. But growth brought challenges. When he wanted to expand outside Seattle, people said it wouldn't work. When he wanted to open stores internationally, experts said American coffee would fail abroad. Howard ignored them all. He trusted his vision. By 2000, Starbucks had thousands of stores. It was everywhere. Howard became a billionaire, but he stepped down as CEO. He thought the company was stable. He was wrong. Over the next 8 years, Starbucks lost its soul. New executives focused only on money. Quality dropped. The magic disappeared. By 2008, Starbucks was dying. Howard watched from the outside, heartbroken. So in 2008, he did something almost no founder has ever done. He came back as CEO to save the company he built. It was a disaster. Starbucks was losing millions. The stock price collapsed. Howard closed hundreds of stores. He retrained every worker. He went back to basics: quality coffee, real connection, the third place. He made a bold decision. On one day, he closed every single Starbucks in America for 3 hours to retrain staff on making perfect espresso. It cost millions. Investors were furious. But Howard knew that fixing Starbucks meant going back to what made it special. It worked. Slowly, Starbucks recovered. Then it thrived. Today, Starbucks has over 35,000 stores in 80 countries. Howard Schultz took a 4-store coffee bean shop and built a global empire. But more importantly, he built a company that treats workers with dignity. Hundreds of thousands of employees have health insurance because Howard remembered his father, because he remembered what it felt like to watch a family suffer. Howard says getting fired from Starbucks was the best thing that happened to him. It forced him to build his own dream, and when the time was right, he came back stronger. Sometimes rejection isn't rejection, it's preparation. Sometimes getting fired isn't failure, it's freedom. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Story Studio 91 and share this wisdom with someone who needs it today.